This morning I ask you that simple question. How do you know that you're well? Do you know your mental health status? Have you checked it? Or, like many of us do, you assume, I'm alright. After all, you confuse mental health with physical health and feel there's nothing wrong with me. Well, we're told some 3.1 million Ghanaians have mental health issues. Not many of them are seeking treatment. Just about 2% of them seek treatment. Are you part of the 2 or part of the 98? This morning, we're having this conversation, and we're having it with you. After all, you're the reason we are here this morning. And we're privileged to be joined by Dr. Dansoah Nuamah, who's a psychiatrist at the Pantang Hospital. We'll be joined shortly by Dr. E.A. Azusong, who is also a psychiatrist at the Accra Psychiatric Hospital. But before we get into the conversation, Mavi, Twitter is with some issues. Tell us.
Yes, so we have some messages on Twitter. Amos_Andy says, I don't think I'm mentally fit now, and the worst part is no one is ready to listen or believe what I'm going through. With the hashtag JoySMS, you can also send us a message on Twitter. At Akosia says, Charlie, people are going through a lot emotionally on our streets, and that's why we need to be kind to each other. Even if it is you being a listener to them, just do it, because you never know what the little kindness you show today will be saving a depressed life tomorrow. And Monta says, this is the last one for now. It says, I don't think I'm mentally fit because living in Ghana alone requires another level of mental strength. So send us your messages on Twitter using the hashtag JoySMS. You can send us your WhatsApp messages also to 055-1111-997.
And talking about, a lot of people behind the I am fine, you don't know what they're going through. One of my friends put a post on one of our WhatsApp pages and says, guys, don't just ask, how are you? Go beyond the how are you to find out how they're doing. Because beyond the how are you, and we always say I'm fine, and that's the end of it. People may
We say by God's grace.
A lot of challenges. Well, we're joined by Dr. E.A. Azusong, who's also a psychiatrist at the Accra Psychiatric Hospital. Thank you very much for joining us. Great. I'd like to start off with you, Dr. Dansoah Nuamah. And because, look, for many people, they ask the question, why should I be concerned? After all, I'm walking, driving, doing everything, well. Why should my mental health status be of concern to me?
That's a good question, and I just want to start by saying I'm really excited we're having this talk, because quite often the subject of mental health gets shrouded under a lot of secrecy, taboo, you don't talk about it. So I'm really happy it's being brought to the fore on such a platform. Now, to look at it, unlike physical health, where you can say, oh, I've had my annuals done this year, I had my test done, I had ECG, I had ABC labs done, and I'm quite sure I'm in this state of health. Mental health is quite different in that regard. It varies from day to day. It's very fluid in nature, and as all of us, once we are going through life, we're having a lot of experiences happening, and these impact our mental space. These impact the way we think, the way we feel, the way we behave, and that really is what mental health is. And so even though it might feel like, oh, I am up, I'm driving, I'm ABC, you might not really be in that state where we say you have optimal mental health, because as I said, it's very fluid. 1 second it can be great, but another it is just down. Right. And once it continues to persist in whichever format where there's some deficiency, then we might move into the realm of disorders. And for that, we have over 200 types of disorders. So I just wanted to know that if you say you're not mentally sound, it doesn't mean you are the person on the street who is walking naked, psychotic. That is not it. But you could be very nicely dressed, sitting here talking with us, and you still not be in a state of sound mental health or optimal mental health.
Are there triggers?
Certainly. There are, and the thing is, there are different disorders and how they present. So there are some conditions that, yes, triggers might be what would precipitate them. Even with necessarily our day-to-day lives, there are some things that that there's a particular thing you can pinpoint to that you can say, this is what is the bother, this is what triggered or precipitated. But then there are also cases where you can't really put a finger to it. For example, there'll be there are people who would have a sense of worry, fear, anxiety, this sense of being overly tense. And you're thinking, I can't place my finger on it. Everything is going on well for me. But then I just have this nagging feeling that won't go. It's just persisting from day one, day two, week one, week two. And it's just persisting, even though everything seems to be great in my life. Same with low mood. Some people be very down, feeling down, depressed, no energy, they can't sleep well, you can't eat well. And everything is supposed to be actually great in your life. But you're just in that space where you're not really your usual self. So yes, there are cases where there might be a clear precipitant that you can point to, but there are also cases where really you can't really pinpoint the actual precipitant.
And that's what I want to understand something. You talked about, our lives being very fluid. In one moment we're all right, in another moment we're down and everything. So you could be mentally sound today. I mean, in the next minute you go. I want to understand. Let me bring Dr. Azusong in here. How is that? How come, all of a sudden you can have different status within a short period of time?
Yeah, so thank you very much for having me. And before I go, I would just want us to go back to the basics. When you talk about mental health, what really is mental health, and how do we know if somebody is mentally sound or mentally not sound? So mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual has the ability to cope with the usual stresses of life.
Right.
You get it?
Sure.
So your ability to cope with the usual stresses of life and to contribute meaningfully to society. So if you are in that particular state where you are able to cope with the normal stresses of life well, and you contribute meaningfully to society, then we can say that you have a very sound mental health. So then brings me to your question with regards to how do we know, and how come that somebody is in a usual state of mental health, then all of a sudden the person switches and all of those things. It's because the stresses of life keep changing. If we were living in a utopic world where we have a balance of stresses, and you know that today I am going to wake up and I'm not going to meet heavy traffic, and that I would come here on time as the time that I have been given to, or I am going to sit in an unusual traffic which would make me stressed up, then it can tip me into something else. We are in life, we do not know what is going to happen. Life events do happen. Somebody is going to get married. The fact that the person is getting married is causing an imbalance in his normal state of usual life. And so this imbalance is what can trigger a person into becoming mentally ill. Someone is going into school, someone is getting a new role and job.
But marriage should be a good thing.
You see, that is how we would look at it. We will look at marriage to be a good thing.
Yes.
But then before you go into the institution of marriage, you have to understand that there are role transitions. You were living your normal life of a single man and living your life how you want it. But this time around, somebody else is going to come and live with you. So the mere fact that your routine is going to change can cause you to become mentally ill. You get a new job, it can cause you to get mentally ill. You get even a promotion at work, can also cause you
Promotion that
Yes.
comes with
promotion
all
that
the
comes
goodies
with
and
all the
everything.
goodies and all the allowances and things.
But perhaps you're thinking about the responsibilities.
The responsibilities that the person is going to engage in, what the person is thinking through the head. And that explains why when you go into a company, the CEO who is sitting at the top is being paid more than the gardener or more than the people who are effecting the ideas of the CEO, because there is a lot of mental fortitude and resilience that is needed at the top to ensure that the decisions are being implemented and done right.
You talked about being able to cope with the stresses of life.
Yeah.
And I want us to appreciate what these stresses of life are. What are they?
Yeah. So these stresses of life are varying. They are varying. So you can have there are two main types. You can have the normal daily stresses and hassles, where somebody is going to buy, even just normally, but going to queue at a watcher joint and waiting for your turn. And somebody, you know that, there are just two more people before I buy. But then the next person before you is buying for 10 people. That alone can cause you to become stressed up because you are getting angry. So we have these normal stresses of life, issues with your partner at home, issues with your children, getting your children ready for school. All of these things are things that can tip you into getting mental illness.
I thought that was exciting, getting them ready for school.
Yes, it is exciting.
Yeah.
And you can look at the exciting bit part
Not
of
always
it.
exciting.
Exactly. And then the negative part of it. So it is that individual's ability to perceive what is happening. So it is the perception of what is happening and how you are going to cope with that particular stress that would actually determine whether you are going to be tipped into mentally ill or not being mentally ill. Then you have the major life events that do happen, like loss of a parent, loss of a job, the economic stresses, and all of these things. All of these things are things that can tip people into mental illness.
And as they tip people, I mean, I'm interested in, because this morning I want us to have a conversation on why we should be concerned, because a lot of people think, well, it's just, like you say, I mean, being able to deal with the stresses of life. And they'll tell you, I'm able to cope with them. I deal with them and I contribute meaningfully. Maybe he doesn't even understand what he's going through. And that's, I mean, what I want us to look at, Dr. Nana Dansoah. So, at what point in time would you realize that you're not being able to deal with these stresses?
Okay, and just since the topic of stress has come in, I just want to add quickly that not all stress is bad. So there's some stress that can be good in the sense that when we are faced with a new challenge, it's an opportunity for us to, exert and bring out the best in us. So sometimes it helps you bring out all your resources to meet whatever challenge. And so sometimes it can help you to actually excel or surpass your expectations. But then again, all the negative aspects, and all the parts we should be concerned about have been drawn to our attention. Now, how would we know that I'm coping well with this particular stress? As I said, it being positive or negative are potentials, but then whatever the stressor is and having it in focus, so you know that I have this interview to go to, and you realize that, okay, I am able to put myself together, plan, and then institute some particular plans that, okay, I know that I'm ready, I've read, I have got my literature ready, I've got my attire ready, I'm driving way ahead of time, all of those, they're the same situation. I know I have planned well ahead so that I go meet it and I don't have much detrimental effects because I'm well planned. But then you could have the same scenario with another person who would still be going to the same interview, but the person knows that I have not actually prepared that well. The person knows that I set off, because of that, I wake up I'm studying way into the night. I'm not getting adequate sleep. I wake up very late. I'm rushing. I'm stuck in traffic now. I'm sweating. I'm having palpitations. By the time I get in there, I am just all over the place. I'm a mess. So that same stressor would have a different outcome with another person. So the thing is, no one thing would be equal to the same outcome for everybody. Each of what might stress me out might not do the same for you. And how I cope might be different from how another person copes. But what are some of the indications that can bring to mind that I am not coping too well? Now, there are a lot of things we can look at, but one of them I would want to start with is sleep. So some of the signs and symptoms you want to look out for. Sleep. And when people are stressed, one of the key things you notice a change in will be the sleep pattern. A change in the nature of sleep. Sometimes you'll be struggling to initiate sleep, so you're struggling to actually fall asleep. Or realize that you sleep and you keep waking up multiple times in the night. And it's not just to go and use the bathroom or anything. You just wake up and you struggle to go back to bed, And the other part is where you can wake up very early, more than 2 hours from your usual routine, and you are struggling. You can't go back to bed. And this continues for a number of days, and as I said, it keeps persisting. So not just one of occurrence equals to you have a mental health problem, but then there's that persistence in the symptoms. Appetite, how your appetite for food, you notice that these changes are happening. All of a sudden, maybe you're eating way more than you usually would, trying to cope with that stress, and it wouldn't be healthy eating. But then for most people too, it will be just a loss of appetite. So you notice that you're not able to you don't even feel for the things that you enjoy, and when it's there, you can't even take it. When you take it, it just tastes bland in your mouth. Your favorite wachi and fufu and apochikakra now just tastes nothing like what you want. So those are the initial things, and then your energy levels. You notice that you're just feeling down. You're feeling drained emotionally. You're just exhausted. you woke up in the morning, you're just exhausted. Getting out of bed is like a chore. You're literally dragging yourself out there. And this might not necessarily hit the extremes at the beginning. It will start off little by little, and you'll notice that it just progressively keeps worsening. And then coming to the thinking faculty, realize that there's a problem with concentrating. You're struggling to concentrate. Your work involves reading, right? So you get to the office, you're reading. You've been reading the same line like for 10 minutes, and you still can't make much sense of it, and you start making very little mistakes here and there. Irritability, how we respond in our emotions, and especially for some men, when you're very stressed, you realize that things that typically wouldn't make you upset that quickly, all of a sudden is like you're just blowing off. So you get home and everybody's just kate because people you've come and they know that no, the stress you're bringing from work is coming to translate to a family at home. And when your child, you see a nice drawing they've drawn, that you'll have a look at, and it's like you're just all over the place because you're just responding very harshly to people that are close around you. These are some of the initial signs that you might see. I mean, the list just goes on.
Any more you want to add, Dr.
So
Azusong,
what I would just want to add is that you know yourself. This is who I am. Your partner knows you. Your friends know who you are, and they know how you act, they know how you behave. Sometimes they even know how you think. Has there been a change in that pattern? And that question goes to you, to your immediate family, and to your friends. If there has been a change, then it means that you need help. And that is very important, and that is one of the key things that we need to look out for. And so sometimes you may realize that you are coming to work, you are contributing meaningfully. People may think that you are coping with your stresses well, but to you, within you, you feel that, I'm not feeling so well. And sometimes these are the things that would lead you to go into a physical hospital. Right. You go to the hospital, you notice that the doctor has done all the labs, but still they say, oh, you are fine, there's nothing wrong with you. Mm-hmm. And in our country, where malaria is the go-to disease, they say, okay, with the malaria drawing, but you've taken the malaria medications, but still, you are still not well.
So let's stay there. That point where it is not a physical illness, and you've done the test and everything is negative. Mm-hmm. Is it too early? Because perhaps you're in the early stages of noticing there's something off. Maybe your mood is changing. Would it be too soon to say I'm talking to a psychiatrist?
No. In fact, that is the dream of every psychiatrist, the dream of every mental health worker, that you come early. Because if you come early, we're able to prevent a lot of bad outcome. The outcome is very good and the prognosis is very excellent.
But Doc, see, at this point, it's only like a feeling, right? I'm just thinking to myself that I'm not feeling too great. Mm-hmm. I'm not thinking it's a clinical something. Yeah. I mean, isn't it too trivial?
No, it's not too trivial. When you talk about the mental health cadre, we have clinical psychologists, we have psychiatrists, we have social workers, we have occupational therapists, and then we have the nurses. So the psychiatrist would most of the time would give you medications. If you speak to any of the mental health cadre workers and let them know that my problem is that I think I worry too much. I think I am not feeling well. We would refer you to the appropriate person to see.
Right.
And so you would probably see a clinical psychologist at that early stage, where the clinical psychologist would help you to be able to cope with whatever you are going through. One of the things that most of the time, it does not happen in our setting is someone has lost a partner. Once you have lost the partner, it is important that you even see a clinical psychologist to help you grieve.
Right.
Why?
That's alone, because the clinical psychologist would help you to grieve and would help you to cope with the loss.
Are you suggesting that without that we cannot cope? Because we found ways of coping all as well.
Exactly. So there are some people who are able to cope, you know, and they're able to come back to their normal. But then in some people, they find it very difficult to cope. And if you feel that I am that person I'm not being able to cope with the loss of my partner, then during that early period, that is that early period where you have to see somebody to help you to cope. But in our setting, we have a lot of people who, like family and friends, religious people, who would help you to cope and offer mental health. Like they offer more or less like psychotherapy, but you do not really know that what they are offering to you is a form of mental therapy.
Okay, so let's put it this way. You started by saying it's always the dream of that, people come early. So they, because when they come late, it may be worse. I want to understand, how worse can it get? How bad can it get? Because, for many of us, we're looking at it now like, oh, if I am grieving, I'll get over it. Yeah. If I don't get over it, it's part of life. We say, to lose somebody is painful. So every now and then you may, shed a tear or something. That should be okay. How bad can it get if you don't seek, help?
Yeah. So like she said, she mentioned some of the symptoms that you would then notice. In the early stages, you may not even notice a drastic change in your pattern of sleep. You may not even notice a change in your appetite. You may not even notice that you are no more interested in watching Man City and Real Madrid play. You know that, when Man City and Madrid are going to play, you are excited about it. But this time around, I'm not even feeling excited. You may not even feel that. And it can get bad to the extent that you then start noticing that your sleep pattern, your appetite, your interest in things that you used to like, then that's when you notice that you are probably having a low mood. Then you may even have suicidal ideas. And like we said, we are looking at mental illness as a whole. And we have so many conditions under mental illness. So it's like asking that, how bad can your physical ailment get? And somebody who has malaria, the symptoms that the person would feel will be different from another person who has a GI infection, would be different from another person who has a retro infection, HIV, will be different from another person who has typhoid. You understand what I'm trying to say? So that is how bad it can get. And so if we are going to really mention the list is so huge that an encyclopedia will not even be able to.
Let's look at the common. You are the hospitals, and people come to you sometimes in late stages.
Yeah.
What are the most common illness that people bring to you?
Yeah. So the most common ones they would come with is the fact that I'm unable to sleep, I'm having headache. I have noticed that my partner is talking to himself or herself. I have noticed that when my partner sleeps, he all of a sudden wakes up and is panicking. I have noticed that this time around, my partner cannot perform as he would want. I want him to perform in bed.
Right.
All these are things that you will notice. Then in other circumstances, you also notice that you say, I've noticed that lately my partner drinks a lot. My partner has started smoking. So these are the common things that people come with to us at the psychiatric hospital. Then again, you have the childhood conditions, where you come and the child is irritable, the child doesn't want to go to school, or the child is having a convulsion, or the child is very hyperactive and cannot sit still, and all of those things. So these are but some of the common symptoms that we would notice.
Are you okay? Before I come to you, because you brought the children,
Yeah.
do they also experience the same things that we adults do?
Children experience the same things that we adults do feel, but they react differently to some of it.
Right.
So you may notice that a child says that I am not going to school, but then you do not know why the child is saying that he does not go to school. Maybe he's being bullied at school. Maybe the child is sick and the child is probably hearing a voice talk to him or her. So they experience the same things that we do, but then their reaction to it is slightly different from how we would react to some of them.
Right, so this morning we're having a conversation about our mental health. I started by asking you whether you knew how well you're feeling. Many of you have been telling us, well, you don't know. And so this morning we're joined by Dr. Nana Dansoah Nuamah, who's psychiatrist at the Pantang Hospital, and Dr. E.A. Azusong, who's also a psychiatrist at Accra Psychiatric Hospital. So let's look at, those who have come to you and have said, oh, so my partner is not. So these are the symptoms. Eventually, what mental health illness do you diagnose that they're going through?
Okay. Just quickly touching on the bit about how the symptoms come out in early interventions.
Right.
And we talked about medicals that are being done when you go with general complaints. I just want to say that we should move into a place where we are comfortable talking about the things we are experiencing as well in our emotions. So when you go and see your GP, it doesn't have to be only about my abdominal pain and my chest pain and my headache and this. All of that can come in. But if you're not feeling well as well, you should be open enough to share that there as well, because we're trying to really decentralize mental health care. We want to make it very accessible. You understand, it's very difficult for someone to get up and say, I'm coming to Pantan to see a psychiatrist,
Right.
because as you mentioned, it sounds like it's very trivial. But then the doctor who is closest to you, you should open up and share. Now we're trying to get a lot of psychologists in most general facilities as well,
Right.
so that at least the care is accessible. So I shouldn't really have to go through hoops just trying to access somebody with whom you can talk to. But then when you were asking what are some of the complications
Yeah.
that can arise out of these conditions, as we said, there are varied conditions in there, and so it's not like one size fits all for each and every condition. You would have different presentations coming up. But then in our experience, as we said, with alcohol and its use, most people try to cope, especially our men. We say bemen, so like when you're experiencing anything in your setting, you realize that you're feeling the easiest thing to reach out for is a bottle, and then use other substances, just trying to cope with all of these stresses and these emotions that one is experiencing. And that is not the healthy way of coping. There are a lot of other ways of coping. You talked about, you also mentioned that everyone seems to experience this. How come some people have it, others don't? We talk about resilience. We all build resilience from the experiences we have right from childhood into our adulthood. And we aim at helping others build on these resilience, so that in the midst of all the disadvantages, we can actually have better outcomes
Right.
from them.
Great. So, Dr. Azusong, we know that in this country, and I mean, as Ghanaians, one of the things we mostly interested in, so we know that physically, if I am not well, this is what I feel.
Yeah.
Mentally, if I am not sound, how does that impact me? So for that person listening to us and asking himself, we've talked about the reason why you should go, but some may still think, oh, all of these things, if I'm not able to sleep, I'll find ways and means of sleeping. But in the end, what is the impact that should convince me that I need to see a psychiatrist?
Yeah. So that was what we were talking about, and saying that we would rather prefer that you come early, come and see us. Let us tell you that we think that you are mentally sound, and that this is how, based on so problem, you have come with this particular A problem, and then we would help you to be able to cope with this A problem. And that is, it's not necessarily about seeing a psychiatrist, because a lot of people would say that when I come and see the psychiatrist, they would say that I am so and so mentally unsound, and so because of that they are going to give me medications. No, we do not always give medications, because if you feel a change in how you feel, in how you think, and in how you behave, then it is a call for you to see a psychologist. It's a call for you to see a mental health worker. And that is the point in which like at that point in time, you can come. If you do not wait, if you do not come at that particular point in time, that is when your family would bring you. And so in a lot of our OPD cases, you have a lot of people who are forced into the hospital. But if they had come earlier, when they started noticing that I am thinking that aliens are after me, I am thinking that I am Akufo-Addo, and then all of a sudden I can change Ghana, all of a sudden I can change the world. These are thoughts that you are getting, and these thoughts are unusual of you. You understand what I'm trying to say? You are hearing voices talk to you that, hey Winston, you are the king of England.
Oh, that is not possible.
You know, yes, you can say that is not possible. You understand?
I can't be king of England.
Exactly.
I'm not. Yeah.
But then, there are some people who hear voices tell them this. That you can go on top of this building and fall down and nothing will happen to you.
Because you're Batman.
Because you are Batman. You understand what I'm trying to say? There are some people who say that, I am Christ, the resurrected one.
The one in heaven.
Yes, I am Christ, the resurrected one. And that I can cause all your ailments to go. I can cause all your economic crisis to come to an end now. It's a sign of mental illness. But we would have to situate it in our cultural context and how we think and behave as people.
Right.
But if there is a change in that particular pattern, of course you know him, you know Winston, but all of a sudden Winston comes and tells you that I am a prophet. And that I think that the hair on you are the snakes of Medusa. You know?
Okay, that's a trigger.
That's a trigger. And that is something unusual. So once you begin to notice these things early, we would want that you come and see us early. Come alone as Winston, that this is how I am feeling.
Right.
We would be able to help you. But if it delays, it would only progress and become worse. That is when you would then say that these clothes I am wearing, they are clothes that the CIA have infested with bugs to monitor me. And so because of that, I am not going to wear the clothes. You know?
But Doc, when you are in that state, are you conscious enough to take yourself to a clinic? Because already your thinking is not right, obviously, because you're thinking that you're Ken Charles when you're Winston Nuamah.
Yeah.
So is there a period where you are sane enough to realize that you're saying the wrong things?
In the early periods, you would notice that this is how I'm feeling.
Okay.
And that is the importance of this program, where we would want people to notice that if you have noticed a change in your thinking patterns, if you have noticed a change in your emotions, if you have noticed a change in your behavior, it could be a mental illness,
right?
A prodrome of a mental illness.
Okay.
But then in the later stage, a lot of our mental people, they have what we call a loss of insight, you know, and 97% of people who come with psychotic disorders would say that there is nothing wrong with me when everybody is seeing that there is something wrong with you. So that is very important for us too.
Yes, Dr. Nana Dansoah, before we go for a quick break.
Yeah, so just to add on to that, and that's how I think I like the intro with which you started this, that we should ask others, how are you? And we should mean what it is, because as you're observing people close to you and you notice these changes, that's where you can also help. Because mind you, we all don't want it to get to the extreme where people become very aggressive, they're pulling out knives, they're chasing others, you're hurting oneself or others. That's what we're trying to avoid. So even though the person might initially even decline that I am unwell, because to them they really think I am still well, when everyone around them notices that no, Kofi is not the way we know him. Amma has changed a bit. She's now talking to herself when she's sitting at her desk. She's not very irritated, and everybody in the office she has a quarrel with. That is the point at which you'd also try to prompt and help the person access help early enough so that it doesn't get out of hand, because once it does reach those stages, it doesn't affect just that particular individual. It extends to everybody who is close to them.
Great. So this morning we're joined by Dr. Dansoah Nuamah, who's a psychiatrist at the Pantang Hospital, and Dr. E.A. Azusong, who's also a psychiatrist at the Accra Psychiatric Hospital. So before we went for the break, you were talking about how people feel. Sometimes somebody thinks he's probably King Charles III now. And somebody may think that he's God, he thinks that he's Jesus Christ, he can heal people. There's those who have suggested to us that some of our men of God, religious, actually are going through mental health issues, and that's what makes them do some of the things they do. You are the expert. Is that the case?
Yeah, that's the case. And if you look at this particular area, it's a very sensitive area. And I would want to say that indeed, a lot of the cases that we get at our various psychiatric hospitals, they come with issues like this, where all of a sudden we have someone who says that I can perform some miracles, I can do A and B, and that I'm a prophet, and I think that I am God or I am the Son of God. But then again, we have to usually put it in context, and this is what we call delusions in the mental health space. And when we talk about the delusions, before we actually classify, if Winston says that I am Akufo-Addo, or Winston says that I am Jesus Christ and I can do so and so, we have to find out if in your cultural setting, is it a usual thing that happens? And that thinking, is it fixed? And even if we provide you with evidence that, hey, you are here sitting here, you are not Akufo-Addo, but then with the evidence that we have provided to you, you still believe that you are Akufo-Addo, then we would call that a delusion. You know, and the delusions can be classified where it can be either a grandiose delusion, it can be a paranoid delusion, where you think that in a paranoid delusion, where you think that it is my house people who are after me. And this is what they want to do. This is what they want to do. They want to kill me. And you see the car that just passed. That car that has just passed means that my house people are at Nogbopo and planning and plotting against me. Or I can hear my house people, because they are passing or something has happened, they want to kill me. Then you also have grandiose delusions, where the grandiose delusions can be either of ability or of identity. So you say that I am this person when everybody knows that you are not this person. That's the identity. Or you say that I can do so and so when everybody knows that you cannot do it. Or whatever you are doing, you are not doing it right. And so you tell people that come and do this, or come and drink this amount of water, and once you drink this amount of water, tomorrow you are all of a sudden going to get 1 million Ghana cedis. And tomorrow comes and the person doesn't get 1 million Ghana cedis. Or you tell the person that bring 1,000 Ghana cedis and I am going to double it and give you maybe 10,000 Ghana cedis. But then the day comes and the person doesn't get it. But unfortunately, a lot of these things happen and we do not get to know of them. The few that happen and come onto our media space are probably things that people have done in their own way, and they've known how to plan it out and show you only the part that you want to see.
Sure.
So really, it's a big challenge, and it calls that such people, or once you notice that a family member is behaving or thinking in that particular direction, you let the person come to the hospital.
Dr. Nuamah.
Yes, so just to add on to what Dr. Azusong has said, you see, the thing is, we are saying 1 in 4 persons will have a mental health disorder, right, globally, and in our society, we reflect the same. And so this is in different cadre as well. So within, let's say, among doctors, it's representative, amongst lawyers. So even in a faith setting as well, we could have these also translating. So that's not to say that everything around faith is a mental health disorder, just to be very clear on that. Now, we should also understand that from what we're explaining, some of these experiences people have when they're unwell tend to be quite unusual. You're seeing things no one else is seeing. You're hearing voices no one else can hear them, whilst you're very, very awake and alert. And considering our context and our culture, we tend to explain a lot of things which are unknown in the realm of the spirits. So if I can hear voices talking to me, no one can see them, and I can hear the voice is telling me he's God and he's Jesus, then of course I must be the messenger of God. And so it gets explained in the realm. A lot of our pathologies get explained in the realm of the spiritual and faith in our context, because we are people of that nature. So as we said, not every pastor necessarily has a mental health disorder, but then we tend to realize these things in our clinical practice, where a lot of people explain what they are experiencing as a calling. So I have been called by God. And at first in a traditional setting, then that means, this person, when the person has an unusual behavior, but they'll say that the person has been called by the spirits. So this person so this person is supposed to be a fetish priest. He's ordained. So if he starts doing your childhood, then God forbid, you are going to be in the school for fetish priests or priestesses till you grow. And now that we've modernized things, then it goes into the realm of pastoral. That means now I am a pastor. I've been called. And so I have met a lot of pastors that, I'm a person of faith. So you would have, but then there are people you would meet, and then when you start querying and you ask deeply. And that's how he's talked about these definitions of a delusion and hallucination, all of those things. Because when you test it beyond what the person just says initially, you realize that no, there's something very unusual about this presentation, and it's not just the person is a pastor, there's actual mental illness with this one.
Is there a way that the congregation can tell
Well,
whether
that's
a prophet or a pastor?
Yeah,
when you're at the congregation level,
these days shall be done.
exactly. So when you're in the congregation at that point in time, and people are already, the mindset is not necessarily brainwashed, but you're in there. People go into these places because they need something. There's a deficit, there's a need, someone wants some need met, so they go in there with expectations. And so at that point in time, most people are not really evaluating these things with eyes wide open, because you've heard some testimonies and you're in there trying to get a solution. People are desperate. And as I mentioned during the break, that in our context, when people start experiencing these symptoms, quite often most people would go to a faith-based place before coming to a clinic. Most people, the first point of call, once you're feeling down, once you're feeling you can't sleep or you can't eat, and you think you're having anything, it's a place of faith. Most people go there first. And that is where, yes, if you are great, if you're fortunate and you end up in a very good place, there are some places that are sound, that will have teams that are actually led by psychologists, amongst others, where they are aimed at addressing this, because they recognize that, yes, in as much as we are in faith, there is the medical, clinical aspect. But there are also some sections that are really doing a lot of harm. We're having prayer camps that are abusing people's human rights. People are chained, being lashed, amongst others. So it's here and there, because it depends on what is happening in those spaces.
Great. Let's activate the phone lines. I'll come back to you shortly, Dr. Nuamah, but let's activate the phone lines now on 0302 216 541, 0302 216 541, and then 055 1111997. So I told you that I was going to give you a chance to share your experiences, concerns, and maybe you have questions you want answered for you. Why not? You could definitely give us a call. But Dr. Nuamah, you talked about that you haven't been a person of faith, but still you've come across certain men of God that after speaking to them, you came to the recognition that these people are not mentally sound.
Tell you interesting things. Sometimes you'd even have pastors refer a pastor. Because even though they are in the realm of like all pastoral, they realize that no, there's something different about these. And that's where the examples Dr. Azusong was sharing. Some of the utterances the person said, even how they are eliciting or getting these callings. I've had an experience where someone actually shared that, look, sometimes if you're hearing audibly in your ears a voice talking to you 24/7, you ask yourself, how many times did Moses actually hear the patriarchs?
On that note, let's get onto the phone lines now. And Ekuya is from Kaswa. Ekuya, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, Weston. Mama V, good morning. How are you?
Oh, very well, thank you. Ekuya, I hope you're well too.
Yes, please.
Great.
So this is a very good topic and discussion. I think it's long overdue that we continue to air these things. So my issue is with the psychologists on set right now. So you have data speaking to so many of the issues coming up, especially as a result of how we are oriented through faith. So I'm believing that having these issues coming up, there should be a way of getting to these people at the various religious places where you can offer training or certain things so that the people would get to access the right place for help. I sent something over to the studio indicating that if dietary units are being set up at the hospitals to aid us in having a good health or comfortable health issues, then I think it's a time that we put these clinical or psychosocial or whatever therapy sections in our hospitals so that people can also access it. Or somebody comes to the hospital with another issue altogether, then you realize that, oh, hold on, this thing is coming up from this angle, so we can actually help the person instead of maybe situating ourselves within the mental hospitals or whatever. As you can tell, people find it difficult coming there willingly unless they are brought there by force. Okay. So can we move forward with the data and help us live a good life that, okay, these are the issues coming up in our system now. The data speaks to these issues. So let's set up units within the hospital or the medical centers where we can catch them young before it mounts up to something serious.
Thank you very much, Ikia, for joining us. We're grateful to you. Let's go to Tema. Apostle Benjamin Manson. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. How about you?
Good. I'm enjoying the discussion. One of the things I think you have not touched on is abuse, child abuse, that can later on in life come out with mental issues, his own stress. Then another issue is, I don't want it to be like, when somebody says they are called by God, then they have a mental issue. I think we need to refine those things. There's a line that I think people are crossing. There's always this bashing of pastors. When somebody is called in the realms of the spirit, they would act unusual. They will not act normal in certain times. When I was called, people said I was a madman. I'm not a madman. I'm saying well educated. So when you are dealing with things of the spirit, it's unexplainable. But I see that our refined doctors are speaking about men of God, transitioning and all those things. I think we need to be very careful.
Well, Apostle Mensa, they've actually explained, they've clarified the point that, look, it's not just anybody who says he's been called by God that could be suffering from a mental health issue. And so thank you once again, but that was clarified earlier. KK is at Joel. Good morning, KK.
Good morning. I want to say thank you to you for treating this topic. It has been very enlightening to listen to you, so thank you.
You're welcome.
I have this thing I want to share with you. If there's a way to get advice. Please, can I be?
Yeah, KK, I think we're having some... If you could just position yourself properly and move the phone a little bit away from your mouth, I think it'll be okay. Well, KK, I think you would have to call us back. Let's go to Adenta. Benjamin, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Winston. How are you?
I'm fine, Benjamin. Hope you're fine, too.
By the grace of God, I'm doing fantastic. I mean, this is a very interesting discussion, one more time. But for me, I don't understand certain things and why, in this scientific age, we are still in the primitive stage. Those who do sociology, you understand the stages. That was postulated by Auguste Comte. Africa is still, and Ghana especially, is in the primitive stage. And it is so sad. If you have a school of theology and the so-called people who have been trained to be pastors are having invigilators to invigilate their examination, there's a problem there. You're not even bringing people of, high repute because they have invigilators standing while they are writing exams because they can cheat. I mean, issues of mental illness, what some pastors tell their members, people sell sachet water for 10,000 cedis because that sachet water is going to deliver it from... I'm just wondering, even outside the pastors, the people who go to those churches, don't they also have mental problems? Rwanda, look at what they are doing. They are moving forward and look at how they are developing. Because now you must at least have some qualifications before you can say you are a man of God. People are just misinterpreting the Bible. So I want to ask a question. That's fine. The doctors have identified all these things. But beyond just talking, are they not going to help us put some legal frameworks to control these things? Because that is what any advanced economy will do. Okay, if you go to the UK, the churches for Nigeria, when they go there, they conform because the charity commission will come after you. Any money you take, you must account for it. Over here, they don't account to their members. Everybody wakes up from slumber and they're a pastor. And look at the harm they are causing to our people.
Thank you very much, Benjamin and Adenta. Let's go to Sakumono where Equia is. Equia, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for this. So I think I have the similar situation in my cousin. And what is happening is that now she doesn't talk to anybody. Initially, I hear she was hearing voices running from one place to the other, reporting people to high authorities, like she can even report her mother to maybe a police that the mother wants to kill her and things like that. And currently, she doesn't talk to her siblings. She's blocked everybody. She can be in the room for hours, even days, sometimes you don't even know whether she's hungry, and the parents are worried. same I hear the siblings are also worried. And just like the doctor was saying, it doesn't affect just one person, it affects the whole family. And so we are worried. And I think they've tried several times to take her to a clinical psychologist or to a hospital. But it's like, and she doesn't even know that she's not well. But so what should the parents do? How are they able to convince her to get to a clinic or something, because she doesn't even know that she's not well, but she's acting strange. Okay. She's not talking to anybody, blocked everybody.
How old is she?
And all that. Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, I was asking, how old is she?
She's about 30.
About 30. Yes. Okay, thank you very much, Akuya. You can also join us on 0302 216 541, 0302 216 541, and then 055 1111997. That's when we're having a conversation about our mental health. And if you have any questions, why not? You can ask Dr. Nuamah and Dr. Azusong. But let's get to the Spinters Road where Andy is. Andy, good morning. Andy, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, Andy.
Please, I'm really going through a lot, and I need some advice.
Please ask.
For the past, since July last year, a lot have happened. I lost my mom, the little business I was doing due to mommy's sickness and death. I've lost that business. And now, I don't know. It got to a time I talked to some few people around me, and no one is ready to listen to me or believe what I'm saying. And I've got interest in, I've lost interest in almost everything. I don't talk to anyone now. I can't talk to anyone. I can't call anyone. And I'm not even ready to mingle with friends. And I think it's really affecting me. I've tried talking to some people, but no, I didn't get any response.
Okay.
Well, what should I do? I'm losing it.
Okay.
And I need help. Yes, I seriously need help. It got to a time I even tried to take my life.
No.
Yeah, it's serious. Yes.
Andy, kindly hold on and speak to my producers, and then they'll pick it up from there. They would help you so you could get in touch with a psychiatrist and then seek the help that you need. Okay, Andy, don't consider taking your life. The psychiatrists are here and they would be helping you to get out of your challenges. Let's pick our last caller for now. Selim in Jamestown. Selim, good morning.
Morning.
Yes, Selim.
This mental health, we all have the problem, all right. But the problem I see is that most of the things are caused by ourselves. So, from family, at the workplace, and all these things. There are some people, you see, we are different types of human beings. We all have our level of how we can take stress. But there are some people who identify that some people, a little bit gets them quickly annoyed and worried and sort of. But they continue doing those things. So when you keep on doing those things, definitely it will end up in this kind of mental problem. There was a program at the university where we did industrial psychology. So industrial psychology, it will teach you a lot of how to handle this kind of stress and a whole lot of things. And maybe it keeps you better. You may be ready when the situation comes, you'll be able to stand until over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Salam will be last caller for now. Okay, so let's get into the issues. Ikuya called to complain about the cousin who's locked herself in the room, and he's talked about his challenges. Benjamin has also been asking a question that when it comes to these religious men, how do we go about it? Over to you, Dr. Azusong and Dr. Nuamah.
Okay. So I'll start with the first one, where the person was asking about access to healthcare. Yes, considering that it's quite challenging going to a psychiatric hospital, and I think I alluded to this earlier, that we're trying to really decentralize mental health care, trying to make it very easily accessible to most people. So we've had Mental Health Authority and the Ghana Health Service championing courses like the MH gap, where we are looking at even within the district levels, we're having units within every hospital such that it can actually render some service. And then once there's a need to scale it up, we can refer appropriately. So the aim is to ensure that every place that you can access, you can actually get some mental health service. And what we'll be doing is that we'll be sharing with you a list of health facilities that the Psychiatric Association of Ghana has compiled of health services where people can access help, so that we can circulate these so that people can know that you don't necessarily have to come to Panta and Ankafor or Accra Psychiatry before you can access help, but then help is actually closer to you than you think. Okay, so that's the first one I want to talk about. Then they ask another bit about abuse.
Yeah.
Abuse is, I think that's a whole topic on its own, because once it happens, the repercussions are unmarried. And it's not just sexual abuse. There's a physical, there's the emotional, there's a psychological, all of those forms. And if it happens right from childhood, it can be so devastating and detrimental. And the impact goes beyond just that period. Oftentimes I would say, we're trying to settle it out of court. We're trying to hush it so that the family is not disgraced, because usually the perpetrator is someone close to the victim. So you say that oftentimes if it will happen, someone who is closer, so it would be a relative, a family friend, that uncle, that grandfather, that would be the person perpetrating the abuse. And so oftentimes when the incident has happened, there's no closure for the victim, because everyone is trying to hush it up, and the victim is left without the necessary attention. And going forward, either the person themselves become abusers themselves, or they end up with a lot of psychological trauma that they end up with these sequelae. So it's something that has to be looked at. I'll just touch on lastly about the legal framework. What are we doing around all of these things? We have identified with the churches. We are saying that yes, there are some practices that are not helpful with some institutions. And so what is being done? As psychiatrists, is not necessarily all on us. It needs a collaborative effort within the institution of the faith practitioners. There is some hierarchy there, and we are really ready to collaborate. So there are all of those options that have to be done. But then at our level, what we are doing so far is engaging in a lot of educational activities. So we are having several talks, mental health awareness talks in churches, in mosques, in schools, in corporate organizations, sharing and explaining these things to the very lay person, so everyone can understand what is going on and then seek the requisite help. For some institutions, they are actually very eager to build wellness teams so that they have support teams in there, and they know they can refer. So I've had some pastors refer people to me because they know that this thing I'm listening to is not just a spiritual thing. This one, the person needs some professional mental help. And so they would actually refer.
Thing.
Exactly. And we're hoping that we can actually scale up and have much more of that happening. It's happening, but it's not to the extent at which we would need it. And so we need more of these to come on board. So there's some good happening in the space, just that there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work to be done.
Dr. Azusong,
to add to what Apostle Mensah was saying with regards to, we are not downplaying the fact that spirituality is important, or what the pastors do is not necessarily a good thing. But then we cannot also let go of the fact that what some pastors do, to the human eye, you don't need to have a spiritual eye to be able to determine that what this pastor is doing is wrong. And though that brings us to the legal framework and the regulation of churches, and there should be a way and a format in which you need to have certain requirements before you can get up to be a pastor. And the fact that you have been called doesn't mean that you have to go and set up your own church. Everybody who is growing up, before you were called, you were attending a church somewhere else. When you were called, why are you not being a pastor in the same church that you're called truly is from that of God? You understand? So a lot of questions can be asked in terms of this, but then this discussion would not give us a very good scope and time for us to go in depth into that discussion. But then it calls on the Christian Association and the Christian Council to do something about what some of the pastors do. Ikuya was also talking about her cousin who is refusing to come to the hospital and is having some mental health challenges and some symptoms. That this is a typical example of how it can end. And if when Ikuya if Ikuya's cousin comes to the hospital, we would be able to, when we speak to Ikuya, we'll be able to find out really when it all started. At the time it was starting, maybe a few months ago, maybe a year ago, at that time, Ekuya could have walked to the hospital. But now, Ekuya's cousin is not of herself to understand the nature of what is going on. And so, no amount of convincing would make Ekuya come to the hospital, other than Ekuya being forced to the hospital. You understand what I'm trying to say? And mental health, it allows us, the law allows us to bring people forcefully to the hospital if they are refusing to come to the hospital. And there is a way in which I would just want to touch a bit on that.
Please do. So
you can call any of the psychiatric hospitals, and you can go into, I think she's somewhere in Sakomono area. You can just go into any hospital at all. We have psychiatric units in most of these hospitals. We have community health, community psychiatric nurses, who once you go in there, they can go in there and talk to Ekuya. They can go in there and give the cousin some medications and bring her to the hospital for us to treat her. Because if we are going to talk to Ekuya by word of mouth to convince Ekuya to come, even me, if I go to talk to Ekuya, Ekuya will not come to the hospital. Because it has gotten to a point in time where she lacks that ability to understand what is right and what is wrong. And in some instances, you may have to go through the police, where the police would go and arrest the person and bring the person to us. And the law allows us for within 72 hours to treat the person to the extent that the person has the mental capacity to now understand that really what was happening to me was really an illness. And then during this particular period, then the person can then voluntarily consent to treatment. And we will then continue with it. But within the 72 hours, the treatment is involuntary.
Right.
And within the 72 hours, we have our way, depending on the condition, of treating the person aggressively for the person to understand what is going on. And then the care must continue.
But you need family consent.
You don't necessarily need family consent. In some instances, let's be very careful here. In some instances, you don't even need family consent. If Winston notices someone who is behaving in a way that Winston thinks that it could be a mental illness, Winston can call the police for the police to come and take the person to the mental illness, to the mental hospital. The law allows us to do that. And then that is where we'll do the certificate of agency and admit the person against the person's will. Because mind you, your right ends where a person's peril, at the beginning of another person's peril. And so at that particular point in time, you are a threat to society. And once you become a threat to society, and if you are even a threat to yourself, the law allows us to treat you involuntarily.
Okay, let me bring Dr. Nuamah in. You want to make a point?
So just to add on, I'm sure most people are thinking, hey, then that means once I'm walking by the road, then anyone can come and catch me because someone would have called that I'm feeling unwell. No, but then there's the heart behind the law, and it's to ensure that we are all safe. Okay, so it's not aimed at just targeting people and marching people to the hospital, but to ensure that we're all safe. And as he indicated, it's not that they think that someone has a mental illness, but then you genuinely deem that a person is a threat to themselves, or threat of harming themselves, threat of harming other people, or destroying property, or you genuinely believe that if the person is not managed, it can really escalate out of the hands of the person. Then I mean, safety is very important. It's paramount that we get the person help as soon as possible. So this is like the extreme end of that spectrum where someone is genuinely not well enough. Okay.
And then Andy also called with regards to how he's feeling. I think that Andy needs to see a psychiatrist immediately, ASAP. And I'm glad that Andy has been very confident enough to even make a call, because you said that he's having difficulty even calling people, but you've been able to call Joy FM to discuss your problem. I would not want to discuss your personal issues here, and unfortunately, we do not have any generic advice to give, because your care needs to be individualized. Because how you are feeling, another person can be feeling the same way, but how we will treat that person would be different. But then what I can tell you is that, Andy, suicide is not an option. The way you are feeling because of the loss of your mom, don't forget that another person would also feel the same way if you take away your life. And then there is always a way out, So just call the producers, and then we'll get in touch with you after the session.
Right. You know how, because of the general economic challenges, and this is coming out of the messages that I shared earlier, where people say, I think I don't feel too well, I want to talk to someone, but there's nobody there to talk to.
Yeah.
We generally kind of feel that if somebody's coming to talk to me, then they are asking for money.
Yeah.
So we're all pulling, well, at least most of us, we're preventing people from reaching out to us. Is there something that you can tell all of us generally, because somebody wants to talk to someone and we're not available to listen because we're thinking they're going to ask us for something that we're not willing to give?
Okay. So I know, and it's very true, as you're saying, because right now, any message that comes through and it looks like the person's asking or demanding of you, when yourself you're stressed, seems like it's overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
But we should be mindful that life is priceless. And some of the signs, when we talked about suicide, we didn't go in depth about it, but the signs of it can be very, very nuanced, that if you're not careful, you'll miss it. And later on you hear the news and you have a lot of regrets. Because people are reaching out for help but are not getting the initial help. Money doesn't solve everything. Yes, money is very important. I agree. I'm the first to attest to it. But it's not everything. Your time and a listening ear can do wonders for the life of everyone. And that's why I said, ask how are you and mean it. So the fact that someone reaches out to you, having that listening ear is the first thing the person really needs. Just having time to actually listen. And sometimes when someone starts saying something, we all think the person wants solutions. Like you start giving advice, even when you've not even listened to the full story. But sometimes just actively listening, just having that patience to let the person just pour out what it is that is bothering them. That is really the first step. And once you listen, you might realize that this is not something I can handle. But just the fact that you've given the person the space to know that someone cares, someone is listening, is the first step. And there you can link the person up to the appropriate help. So with that, you might not necessarily even give all the money. And once you let the person know that, okay, based on this challenge, you may need to get this kind of help, A, B, C. So the person is informed. So the person doesn't think like, oh, I went to tell sister about my problem. All of a sudden, it's all over the place without my knowledge. But you let the person just know, oh, I can't, this is the extent to which I can do, but I can help in this way. I can link you up with this clinic or this particular person to talk with. And that will be the first step of getting the person actually well. Because mind you, every life is priceless. Every life.
Well, every life is priceless. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Dr. Nana Dansoah Nuamah, who's a psychiatrist at the Pantang Hospital. And to you also, Dr. E. Azusong, who's also a psychiatrist at the Accra Psychiatric Hospital. We are very grateful that you made time to join us. And from the cause, I'm sure you both know that we must do this another time.
Yeah.
Right?